Hello and welcome to Magical Journey. I'm your host, Daniel Cahoon, and tonight I've got a very interesting and special guest for you guys, but I want to do some house cleaning right quick, housekeeping, and let you guys know where you can find me online. First of all, check out my Facebook group for Magical Journey. That is where you're going to get the most current updates on all projects, all uh, any lives that are coming up, all that kind of stuff. All the tea is spilled in that group. Uh, if you are a more of an audio type person, you will find on my website, magicaljourney.com, a link to the audio podcast. Well, actually, you'll find all of my links on there. So that's a really good source to have as well. And then, of course, on YouTube. Now, tonight, we have probably, no doubt, this is going to be my most interesting guest for a while, I think, because her view on ghost hunting and the techniques that she uses are extremely different than a lot of the people that I've talked to and talked about going on the show with. And this is why I'm bringing her on. That and she has an amazing personality. You guys are going to fall in love with her. Um, she's just amazing, trust me. So, without further ado, I am going to bring to you on stage Tanya Ellis with Crossing Over Project. And I got that
Hi.
backward.
That's okay. Project crossover.
Thank you.
Some
I
of you
just
may,
realized that.
some of you may have seen me on TikTok. That's where I tend to show up the most is on TikTok under Project Crossover. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so glad to have you here. Look,
Thanks.
I got to tell you guys, when I did a pre-interview the other day, and I was only gonna like hang out and like not take up too much time, and was planning on an hour interview. We wound up talking for like about 2.5 hours
Yep.
before it was over. So let's get into this. Okay, I want our viewers to know because you do things a lot differently
hmm
in some ways. I want you, first of all, to tell us a little bit about exactly what you do.
Well, I assist people with absolving haunting situations, but I do it in kind of a unique way. Instead of coming in and cleansing and saging and stuff like that, my approach is to come in, communicate, find the entities, communicate with them, and then assist them with crossing over. And I find it to be a very effective method because you're actually removing the energy from the earthly plane. You're removing that trapped energy, and so you're not just like shooing it away. And
I
so
like,
I, I'm sorry. So I've told people before, if you come in and you just like banish, entities from your home, it's kind of like going in your yard with a leaf blower and blowing all the leaves out of your yard, but they end up in your neighbor's yard. So I try to resolve the situation completely and thoroughly, so nobody else has to deal with the issue.
wow,
So
yeah. And see, this is very interesting because a lot of people do not necessarily do that.
right.
Um,
Well,
the
and I've heard people say too that if you're not careful about it, that it can frustrate the entities, and I can see where that would be the case. So
right, right, yeah, can definitely see that. What are, because I know this is always a question that people want to ask. Somebody's going to want to know. So, as far as what you use to communicate with or any
mhm.
equipment that you use when you're doing this, what is your favorite object to start with?
So when I first started out, I started using divination rods. Now I actually have them hanging on the wall right here. But I started using divination rods when I first started out, and I realized that there were a lot of issues with using divination rods. For example, you yourself, your own energy, if you're kind of have a bias answer when you ask a question, you yourself can influence the rods. And so it's kind of hit or miss, you know, when you're using the rod. You have to really remove yourself from the questions in order to get accurate answers with divination rods. And so what I did was I devised a it's a kind of a little homemade mechanism for communicating where I'm actually getting full messages, not just yes or no answers. And using the rod and using a like an alphabet mat, and it kind of smacks of Ouija board, but it's very different, in that it's a lot more effective, it's a lot more accurate, and the things that I'm told when I'm communicating acts as confirmation for me that, you know, this is actually happening. You know, so
Right.
I get to hear their stories, I get to hear where they're from and what happened, and it's so interesting. I'm so grateful for the opportunity.
So you touched on something that's really important because I think a lot of people think that we are just one big ball of confidence about every single thing that we're doing
No.
when we investigate it and so forth. So so you said that you believe that this is kind of like more confirmation for you that you actually
Mhm.
like, yeah. And see, that's one of the
Yes.
things that I really want people to understand is like we are not, and when I say we, I mean anybody that's like whether you're investigating the paranormal, you're researching, you're doing any type of paranormal activity or any working with the paranormal at all. Like honestly, we can be some of the most insecure people in some ways.
For the
So
yes.
yeah,
For the
yeah,
longest
because
time, I was trying to debunk my own stuff for the
mhm,
longest time, and I couldn't do it. It was I just kept getting more and more confirmation, and
right. Well, and I
so
think there's a tendency for us to look at it and go, did that,
at
you know,
first
because
it
yeah,
feels very surreal at first, you know,
right.
and then you start realizing, no, this is real, this is happening. You know?
Right. That's the thing of it's like because and I think a lot of people just assume like now I've been doing stuff with the paranormal for a long time.
Mm,
So if and the last place that I lived at was just a hotbed. So I get more concerned when I don't experience anything. Uh,
mm-hmm,
honestly, early on, yeah, and even now though, if there's something certain things that I'm doing, yeah, kind of go,
mm-hmm.
okay, did this really happen? Mm.
Right.
So I feel you there about the confirmation.
Yes.
So so you when somebody reaches out to you,
Mm-hmm.
like what is what is the typical usual kind of first encounter that you have with the person dealing with the issue?
Well, of course, it depends on if I'm seeking them out or they're seeking me out, which I've had both happen. And it also depends on their personality. So I've had some that are, especially when they're children, they'll be very shy and
Mm,
they don't want to talk. And I'll have to kind of, you know, encourage them to communicate. And then I've got some that come in and it's like they, you know, big personalities and big feelings, you know, and I can feel, and that's the crazy part too, is I can feel the energy, and I can. It's not just what I'm communicating; I can
mm,
feel it too. And I've had instances where there was one gentleman that came in. I was helping someone who had a nasty, um, very nasty haunting. It was a very old house, and I called him in, and he slammed my front door, and it was a storm door, so it was made of metal. And for those of you who, if you know, you know, things that are made of metal are much easier for them to manipulate. And so he came in, he slammed my front door, and he was so powerful. I felt it all over. Usually, I can just tell where they are in the room based on where the goosebumps are. But
Right.
in this case, my whole body was lit up. All my nerve endings were lit up. And he filled the room with his energy. And he came with a little girl that was
Oh,
his
wow.
granddaughter. But
Wow.
yeah, I've got so many stories. I could talk for hours about this. But
Ne- I'm
usually
sorry.
when I'm talking, I'm usually I'll usually ask them a question like, "Hey, what's your name? You know, when did you pass? Where are you from? You know," and that'll get them to talking. And usually they'll tell me, you know, uh, what happened to them, you know, and uh,
Mm.
and then I've also had, after I crossed them over, I've also had them come back and thank me for it, which that's always nice. But
So one of the things I want to say right quick, because I wanted people, I was going to get you to do this before we started, but then I thought I want people to understand what we're talking about tonight,
okay.
and then I'm going to give you a couple of of prompts to share out contact information.
Okay.
Um, Now is one of those, because now that they know a little bit about what you do, I
Mhm.
want them to know how they can get in touch with you.
Okay. Absolutely. So, first of all, I'm on TikTok. I put my at Project Crossover. I put that in the chat. That's my handle on TikTok. Also, I don't really have a very strong presence on social media, but I'm growing. Um, but I also usually give people my email address in case they want to contact me that way. And my email address is Larson Tanya10 at gmail.com.
Okay. Um, I want to make sure that my mind actually got. All right. So let's let's camp for a moment and I really want to get people to understand what the term crossing over means, because I'm not sure a lot of people are familiar with that term. Let's camp there for a minute and kind of
Okay.
explain to people what crossing over is, why you do
Okay, so when somebody dies, and
it.
I'm sure all of you have heard the whole thing about, oh, go towards the light, go towards the light. Well, sometimes they don't make it through, and that energy gets trapped here
Mhm.
on the earthly plane, and that's where you end up with ghosts. Ghosts are not people that have died and crossed over, um, although they do come back to visit loved ones every once in a while. But and there are distinct differences between the two. I can always tell who I'm talking to based on those differences. But while they're still on the earthly plane, they are still this very same person they were before they died. They're still cosplaying that person. They are that person without their meat suit, basically. And so it's not until you cross over that you kind of reunite with your whole self and become who you really are. while you're here, you're still basically cosplaying this character. And so if somebody dies and they don't make it through the portal, make it through the doorway, they kind of get trapped here. And um, so we have to, what I do is when I encounter somebody like that, I will find them, identify them, and then I will ask for help on their behalf. And so the help comes, they open a portal just for them, and that allows them to cross over. Um, and I have to say, it's very important. Identifying them is very important because when they open that portal, because I've done groups before and I've messed up, is when they open that portal, it's specifically for that person. So if I do a group of people, 4 or 5 people, and I forget one of them, they get left behind. And I have to do it all over again and
Wow.
apologize profusely for forgetting them. And then they're able to cross as well. So, but I've had great success. I've done hospitals, prisons. I've done people's houses, businesses, hotels, haunted hotels. So I've done a lot of different places. And then I
So,
also have, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
And then I also have, sometimes they come to me too, because
Yeah.
a lot of people don't realize that they're wandering the earth. They're free. You know, a lot of people think, "Oh, I have to go to a haunted house to find to find a ghost." No, they're everywhere. They are everywhere. And I know there's a lot of people out there that would be really freaked out to know that, but they are everywhere.
Right.
um, Whether a place is haunted or not is more a question of when than where, you know. And I've had lots and lots of experiences, even in my own house, you know. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's what we were talking about. Hey, real quickly, is I at the bottom of the screen there where you see Pam's comment, is that the right uh email account there?
oh, I'm not
Eh,
seeing. Oh, that's private chat. Oh goodness, I was on the wrong tab. I'm so sorry.
No, that's
Um,
okay.
uh, so I'm going to join chat. Oh, it's not letting me.
It's not letting you join chat. What is it asking you
It's
to?
asking me to. I must not be logged into YouTube, is what it is. Hang on.
If you yeah, if you click onto the
Um,
to the prompt.
I am so sorry. Didn't.
No, you're fine. Look, this is
I didn't
live,
even.
and
I did not even think about having to log in. There we go.
you know what? This is live, and I don't know if you are if you ever got to experience live television back in the day, but
Yes.
I, you know it. I told somebody not too long ago, I said doing a live show is kind of like watching Carol Burnett back in the day, or some of those shows that um,
Yes.
were filmed live, because anything and everything's going to happen, and that's
Yes. And
perfectly okay.
you know, some of her best shows were when they couldn't contain their laughter.
Right,
So,
right, exactly. And so, and part of it too, um, Pam has another really good question,
there we go.
and I
Oh,
think you
the
kind of,
question, can anyone help a
yeah.
spirit cross over? Yes, absolutely. Um, as You just need to know the steps to follow, to go through. Um, because apparently once they open the doorway, you have to then request for them to close it. And I didn't know that at first. And so I was, yeah. but that's okay because only it's open for a specific person, so nothing else is going to come through. But it's not it's not good to have, doors open everywhere. Energy gets out. So,
Right.
but yeah.
I just,
So
the minute you said that, all I could think of is close the door. The air conditioner's not going to cool though
I'm,
outside.
I'm
Um,
not going to cool down the whole neighborhood.
right, right.
Yeah.
So I know you get asked this a lot too because it's a thing with people who uh, one of my folks that usually has been trying to finally like popped into. I'm was waiting for that because Trisha's very curious about um the one of the questions that people always ask, and you've touched on some of this already a little bit as far as experiences go, but what is probably one of your wow moment experiences that you've had in doing doing your research and investigation and your just overall your whole experience with Project Cross?
Wow.
There's a lot, I know.
Well, that one gentleman, that was very crazy. His name was
Right.
Ludwig. He was from the 1700s. So,
Oh my goodness.
but yeah, Ludwig. I had not too long ago, actually, I had this lady come through who she introduced herself, and she was somebody that she said likes to hang out at my house because there happens to be a child that lives in the house, and she absolutely loves kids. And she felt so bad because that child, kids are, they tend to have more psychic abilities than adults. And he caught sight of her one day, and it frightened him. And she felt bad about it. And I said, well, I said, what do you think he was scared of? And she said, well, I died of jaundice, and this is what she said, quote unquote, I'm all yellow and ugly. And I was like, oh, I said, well, I said, if you cross over, that'll go away. And she was like, no, I don't think so. I think you're lying. And I said, well, okay, and the funny thing is, I get that a lot because, like they don't want to. One of the common themes, I'm sorry, I'm skipping around here. I'm getting excited now. One of the common themes is they didn't want to cross over because they didn't think they lived up to like the standard of the Bible, and they were afraid they were going to go to hell. So when they died and the doorway opened, they were like, no, I'm not gonna. I'll just stay right here. I'm not going to take my chances. I get that a lot, and I do mean a lot. Um, and so what I do, and I tell them, I'm like, well, it's kind of sort of that's not exactly, what you have to expect. And they're like, no, no. And they kind of go, have you ever died? You don't know. You don't have any street you don't have any street cred. You've never died before. What do you know? You're still incarnate. And so what I typically do in that case is I will actually call in like a guide or somebody who knows what they're talking about, somebody who, a credible source, and they'll talk for a while, and then they usually cross over at that point. They're convinced that they should go. So I don't know what they talk about, but yeah, that's a very
That
common theme.
has got to be. I imagine there's no boring moments with what you one
Have I
of
have you ever come across, oh, somebody that I know?
yeah, yeah.
Yes, I have actually. I have. It was a girl. I'm not going to say her name, but it was a girl that I knew back in my early 20s, which was like 30 years ago. And we used to hang out, and I found out that she had some addiction issues, and her life was kind of, anyway, she kind of moved on. And I didn't hear from her for 30 years. And then I start doing this, and she shows up at my house, and I'm like, girl, really? I'm so sorry. Let me help
Mm.
you. You know?
Wow.
So yeah. Her name was Jennifer, but
Oh,
that's all
wow.
I'm gonna say.
Yeah. Wow.
So
That's got to be, I can't even imagine.
yeah.
I, so you guys that caught what she just, I know, I already know what you like. That you might like, everybody is watching is probably thinking, wait a minute, you can't, you really like all of you guys look like babies to me now still anyway, because like I'm ahead of y'all probably by a little bit. But yeah, the first time I found out that it like told me that she was not like in her 30s or so, I was like, are you sure? That was my first thought was, is that, am I hearing this right? 'Cause, yeah, um,
No, I'll be 50 this year. So yay, the big 50. By the time
yeah. So let me ask you this, because I know how people react to things when they
Mhm.
find out that you have something that you do like this or whatever.
Right.
Do you get those people that want counseling sessions about the whole process of like not being alive any longer? Do people come to you for like crazy questions like that? Like, well, what's it like? Do they ever tell you what it's like to go through the whole process of passing and all that? Do you ever get people that want to know those sorts of
Not
things?
too much. I think a lot of people kind of already have their own ideas, right or wrong. You know, they have their own ideas already set
Right.
as to what happens. Um, but
Mm.
I mean, just from my experiences and as I've communicated, the only things that I know for sure is that from the time they cross to the time they're able to come back can be anywhere from a few days to a few months, depending on how long their life was, how traumatic it was, how much they have to, look at. Um, and there's some kind of a life review.
Oh wow, yeah, yeah.
That's all I know right now. So,
Wow. So Patricia, I want to um, get get a little bit of that for you actually. Yeah, you can learn to do
mhm,
this. Uh, there are steps to it,
mhm,
and I would almost guarantee that if you really wanted to
mhm,
talk more about the steps,
mhm.
that Tanya would be most happy to
Oh,
talk to you about that.
absolutely. Absolutely. This is so needed in the world. People need to be doing this for so many different reasons. It not only benefits them, it benefits just society in general because it's
Hmm.
getting that energy off the earth
Right.
and back to where it belongs. Wherever you believe that is, it's getting it off the earth and where it belongs. And, a lot of these earthbounds, some of them, I mean, some of them are, a lot of them are really nice. They're just people. That's all they are. They're just people like you and me. And I tell people, just act like, just talk to them like you would Joe Blow off the street. If you wouldn't say it to a person, don't say it to them, you know? And I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. But, but no, crossing them over it's doing them a service, and it's also doing a service to society too, in general, because that energy is not always positive. And if you think about it, a lot of them are scared, they're confused, they're sometimes they're bitter and angry, sometimes they feel abandoned,
Mm.
and it's best if we get that resolved. So, and I would be more than happy to go over the steps. So,
All right, that's awesome. Yeah, I want to, you know what, you said that about experiences. So I have a friend who was telling me about one of her experiences recently.
mhm,
She went to have a procedure done at the hospital,
mhm.
and apparently
Oh,
she saw two. There was an older woman,
mhm,
and a young woman uh, who had passed there at the hospital, and they made themselves very known to her. They were very, the older woman was very, nurturing. She held her hand and was like being very reassuring and so forth.
mhm.
The younger woman was all excited that she could be seen, because nobody was seeing her.
Right.
And she was like, "Oh, I want to come home with you." And of course, my friend was like, hold on, this is not the way that works. None of this works that way.
Right.
Um, and of course, she called a friend of hers to help her take care of that situation. But uh, when you said that, I thought about that was like, how many times have we, those of us that are open and sensitive to these things.
Yes.
Uh,
And I've actually gotten that before when I'm sitting down communicating and someone will be, talking or whatever, and I'll pick up on it.
mhm.
And they're like, wait, you can hear me? What? You know? I'm like, yeah, I'm right here. Hey, how's it going?
Wow.
Tell me your story. I want to know.
Right. Well, they're so used to not being seen and heard.
Yes.
Um, I
Yes.
think that's one of the things that makes it kind of surprising and shocking to them at first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a
So,
lot of I've seen them travel a lot in groups too.
oh yeah, 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 yeah.
So, especially if it's a family, like uh, I see a lot of parent-child combos, brother-sister combos, husband-wife combos. We had a husband and wife that they had made a pact before they died that whoever died first was going to stay behind and wait for the other one. And if you have a pact with your spouse, don't do that. Don't do that because it's very difficult uh, to cross over after you refuse. So,
Mm,
but yeah, I see that a lot, pairs, but I also see groups, and I think what they do is they get lonely and they kind of like they come they come together and they kind of travel in packs,
right, right.
which is
We,
understandable.
that rings very true in so many ways because I know uh, I've seen some researchers and investigators who have taken photos and they've
Hmm.
shown up on photos as one image, but if you look close enough, it's actually several different
Hmm.
spirits together forming an image.
Right.
So that typically that happens more than not when you
Yes.
see some of the photographs that people have taken. And the first time I realized that, I was like, oh my goodness. So that apparition I saw was actually a group of apparitions
Hmm. It can
forming
be.
one big picture.
Yes.
Wow. It was
Yeah.
very interesting. So, because I always find these manifestations to be, uh, there's a good question too. Is it
For
more
young
track?
people who pass, my dad was 92. So there are very specific times where it's higher risk for people not to cross. Traumatic deaths, very traumatic deaths like car accidents, stuff like that. And that's simply because they're basically knocked out of their body and they don't realize they're dead until
Mm,
it's too late. I see a lot of there was one there's a lot of people that they like die in their sleep and don't realize they're dead. And then I hate to say this, but no, I don't see very many suicides. The only suicides I see are the ones that are afraid that committing suicide is going to send them to hell.
Mm,
That's the only ones I see. But with a suicide, they know what they know they're going to die. They know what they're doing. And they realize they're dead, and so there's no surprise there. But uh, more, I do see with like overdoses. I see a lot of people who overdose on drugs that are sedatives because they're very relaxed. They're relaxed, they're kind of inside themselves and they're just chill. And then suddenly they die and they don't realize they're dead. And yeah, but those are the instances I've seen the most of. So
oh
why did
yeah.
we lose the opportunity? No, in fact, really honestly, we don't actually have to cross them because they eventually absorb back into where they're supposed to be, but it takes a very, very, very long time. And so what's happening is we're producing more earthbounds, especially with the population we have now on Earth. We're producing more earthbounds than what's being than they're not absorbing fast enough, and so the number's growing. So that's why it's
Right.
very important for us to do this. That's a good question, though.
Yeah, you guys are coming up with some really good questions
Hmm.
tonight, which
Absolutely.
I knew
Thank you.
that. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. See, I told you guys, I'm telling you, is like you can't help but love her. Your energy is amazing, and the way that you go about explaining things, very like I don't know if anybody's ever like told you or not that you have just this amazing way of coming with questions with the answers and just the way the energy that you put into the answers and
Thank you.
the wording and so forth is just you're just amazing at answering questions.
Thank
Um,
you.
so the the big thing that I've noticed, and I'm sure a lot of times, when it comes to uh, especially like you were talking about with accidents and stuff like that, like it's almost like the first time I watched Beetlejuice, I was like, wow, how accurate,
Yes. Yes.
how accurate. Because it's kind of like, I mean, we don't really, because we haven't had the experience, we don't think about it a lot. But
Hmm.
one of the things that I try to do when I'm traveling, especially, and I'm stuck in traffic, and I I realize that that is a good chance that I'm stuck in traffic because of a fatal. uh, is I
Yes.
immediately start putting energy into it and immediately start, uh, doing what I do to,
Hmm.
to try to help out in any way possible because
Yes.
you already know, like, unless it's somebody who, you know, there've been a couple of times where the accident was, a trucker that had coronary or whatever, and
Right.
they obviously knew that they were having, a medical issue, and then
Hmm.
you know, that they unfortunately perished, and at that point, and then the vehicle collided.
Hmm. Right.
Um, so in a case like that, they're pretty much like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm gone now. But in a sudden episode where, um,
What
like I
1
know,
minute you're here, 1 minute you're not.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and I think especially with like, do you find that a lot of times you're like these the accidents that involve the younger people,
Hmm.
like they seem to be the most easily confused by things.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And then I hate to say it, but the most scared too. And they're just kind of wondering the earth, and then after a while they kind of they're like, you know what, this isn't so bad. I can do what I want and go where I want, and you know, I can go to Disneyland, So it's not completely sad, but uh, but yeah, the younger ones have a harder time with it. Somebody asked, "Can you find a specific person?" Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And the thing that I learned about it, about what I do, is that I don't actually have to go to the place to get them. I can just call them in. So let's say there's a famous haunted place in another town. Okay, if I wanted to, I could call them in and deal with them here remotely.
Oh wow.
What about atheists? Um, I'm not sure. I don't, I've never actually run into that where anybody has actually called themselves an atheist. Um, I I wonder if maybe just the act of dying and being an earthbound and seeing other spiritual things, if that doesn't kind of knock them out of that belief system. I don't know. I really don't know. I've never had anybody that said, "Hey, I'm an atheist."
Right, right. And we could get into a lot of things about that, but
Right.
honestly, I find that um, I find the same thing, to be honest with you. I don't like, I do remember a discussion, a literal discussion, uh, one time with someone who had passed over who did tell me that they weren't sure exactly how to relate to the experience
Mm-hmm.
because it was not what they expected.
Right.
And I never came out and said, "Well, wait a minute, were you an atheist before this?"
Right.
Surprise. But I I really try to avoid asking that question to people, to be honest with you, myself, because I have some pretty strong convictions about, you know, not putting my a campfire out with my face. So,
I hear
something you just don't do. You just don't do it.
you.
Um, when you ha let me ask you this, because I don't even think I don't know if I actually asked you this the other night or not, but I don't think you've actually answered this yet. But how in the world did you get involved with this to start with? That's one of the questions I'm sure. Well, because everybody has that moment,
Right.
the decisive moment where they finally get the aha. So what was your aha? What caused you to finally start working?
There was there was a lot of steps involved in getting me to this point. My parents, uh, my parents owned a haunted house when I was a kid, and I would hear stories and about what they would experience and stuff. And my mother, she was very compassionate towards the spirits, and it creeped her out, but at the same time, she said she would repeat over and over, "How may I help you? How may I help you?" And I thought that was really nice. And then when I grew up, um, and took over, we had moved, and I took over some property, and we found a tombstone, or at least what we thought was a tombstone. It was a big flat rock that was sitting up in the ground, and it had initials carved on it.
Mhm.
And then I saw somebody using divination rods, and I thought, wow, I need to get some of those. And so I was trying to find, because they moved the rock. My parents moved the rock, and I didn't know where it was at. And so I felt bad, and I wanted to find the grave. And so I got some dowsing rods, and I was going to go grave dowsing. And I found the grave and the ghosts,
Oh, wow.
and there were two of them. And it was an old 1800s couple that passed away on the Pioneer Trail.
Mm.
And yeah, and so that kind of, and then they followed me, and I had to figure out how to get rid of them. And I hate to say that, I don't mean that in a mean way, but at the time, the whole idea of ghosts scared the bejesus out of me. And so I kind of like developed my own way of, going off of what my mother used to tell me about. Oh, how may I help you? How may I help you? How may I help you out of my house? you know and that's what's got me started. And I figured out a way to cross them over, and
Mm.
I just kept on going from there. So, but I do have a lot of compassion for earthbounds, especially now that I communicate with them, and I hear their stories, and I realized I'm no longer scared, by the way. I realized they're just people. They're just people without their meat suits. That's it, you know? So,
So,
how do I hear them?
yeah.
So sometimes I can hear them, sometimes. And sometimes I can see them, but I don't see like a full apparition. I'll just see like a, like, especially as they're moving, I'll see like a whew, you know. But I rely very heavily on my divination tool that I made, um, in order to get actual conversations going, and I get full messages, and that's how I'm able to actually have conversations with them.
Patricia's very excited about this conversation because she's got
Oh,
some
good.
really, yeah. So this is, this is probably one of those questions that when people have asked me before, how do you know that they're there?
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
I'm always like really, because people are so easily spooked by these things. And
Yes.
guys, uh, y'all quit watching all these like dramatic ghost hunters shows because it
Yes.
it is like they're entertaining, but I mean, be real, come on. Like there nobody's grandma's gonna come up behind you and go, you know, you smell different when you were asleep or something like that. They're not gonna do they're not gonna grandma's not gonna come up and freak
Right.
you, you know.
Right. 99% of the time, you're gonna have no idea they're around. They're not gonna do anything. Um, it really, honestly, I will tell you this much: it's the kids that will make themselves known more often
Hmm.
than the adults, because the kids, they didn't, like I said, they're still cosplaying exactly who they were in life, and they didn't live long enough to have that life experience and develop that level of emotional intelligence to understand that, ooh, you don't scare people, you be respectful to people, so imagine you have a kid who is free to wander the earth, go wherever they want, they have no negative consequences, and a lot of them are very sweet. They're very, very sweet. But then you have some too that, you know, if they get mad, they might try to scare you, or they might try to retaliate in some way, So a lot of
Yeah,
times when you see these really, really bad hauntings, it's usually a kid. I'll be honest
you know,
with you.
acting out of
So,
so so for my prayer warriors in here, I want you guys to uh, keep Keith list questions.
oh,
So
absolutely.
let me let me ask you this, because this is one of those things that, and everybody has a different view on this. Like
Mhm.
if you're a ghost hunter, you're like everybody else. You know, everybody has a different experience, a different perspective, and a different view. So many I've ran across a lot of people who've been working with the paranormal for a while, and
Mhm.
a lot of them, especially the ones that like you already know where this is going probably with the kids. Um, a lot of them that have been around for a while do have a lot of experiences that make them believe sooner or later
Mhm.
a more definite answer about uh, whether a spirit that they're dealing with is a child or a dynamic entity.
Mhm.
Now, there are some, and y'all forgive me for saying this because there's some people probably out there that's going to hear this. It's going to be like, hey, I'm one of those people. Um, that literally everything that does not walk the earth but still here is a demon. Everything, a rock that moves by itself is a demon. It just that's the way that's their mindset. And I love you guys, but come on, give it a little bit of a rest. Cut some grace once in a while, okay? But here's the thing: do you find, and how often? Really, here's the question: how often do you find that some of these noisy ghosts, or the poltergeist,
Mhm.
or the uh, the kind of mischiefy ghost, how often do you find that they're actually children and not demons?
So far every time. I have
Okay.
never I have never run across an instance like that where it's an actual demon.
Mhm.
And the reason I know that is because I'm clairsentient. And so
Uh,
I can actually feel the energy, and I can feel what they're what they're feeling. Does that make any sense? Like
yeah,
if they're sad, I can feel the sadness, or if they're. And
right.
I have actually run across, not ghost hunting, but I have actually run across a demonic entity. And let me tell you something, the energy is way different.
Hmm.
Way different. They might be able to change their visage or how they talk, but they surely cannot change that energy. It is who they
Right.
are, and they can't fool the people you know who can feel it. So, but so
Exactly.
far I've not run into any.
That
It's
is very important too, because honestly, my personal opinion on that is,
mm-hmm,
you know, I think it has a lot to do with our calling.
mm-hmm,
There are some people who are just called to do what you do. And then
mm-hmm,
there are some people who are called to, or at least have the vibe to be kind of like an exorcist. And I think depending on where you land in your
mm-hmm,
calling will will really
mm-hmm,
dictate sometimes what and who you come
mm-hmm.
across.
Right.
Uh, yeah, no, we're both in the agreement that there are demons. It's just
Mm-hmm.
that, yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah, there
saying.
are.
It's like there's a tendency, I feel like, honestly, there's some people I've met who every single entity or in spirit that they come across
Right.
is is dynamic, and I'm like, sometimes I joke about it, and sometimes I kind of go, really, but there are people who are called to do that, and
Mm-hmm.
they're gifted to be able to deal with that, and
Right.
uh, some very, very big names in those
Mm-hmm.
areas.
Right.
Uh, but there are people who just they that's not their vibe, that's not their call,
Mm-hmm.
their experience. That's what I want you guys to know about, because last week I had on a totally different group of ghost hunters doing a totally different thing. And
Hmm.
this week I've got a different type of ghost hunting going on here, right? And so here's what I want you guys to know from this. The ghost hunter is as different as each person.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
our experiences as paranormal investigators, or however you work with the paranormal, is going to be very different based on each person's, because that's the reality of the situation. You know, we all have a different vibe, all different energy.
Hmm.
So I want to, excuse me, I want to give you an opportunity again as we're starting to get close to that time to talk about where people can find you.
Hmm.
Uh, I gotta tell you guys, like my Facebook group, if you're on there, and I know you are on there, um, is a really great place to connect with these people that are coming on my show. Uh, I don't know anybody that is a guest of my show or has been a guest of my show that is going to begrudge you getting in touch with them. That all of the people that I talk to and have on the show really love being able to communicate with people, especially like it's good to be able to talk to the living sometime because yeah, you know. Uh, so there's a good way of getting to know, getting to get in touch with them too. But where can people find you online? And once again, what is a contact?
Okay, so let me see. I typed it earlier, but it didn't. It's like it wouldn't let me post. Let me see if it'll let me post it real quick so that this is my. Okay, it's not going to let me post. So my email address, and I do not mind anybody emailing me. My email address is LarsonTanya10 That's Larson Tanya 10 at gmail.com. And then if you also want to check out some of my vids, I'm on TikTok. I'm at at Project Crossover, all one word. And I do have a lot of different I have a lot of different videos. It's not just ghost hunting. Some of those vids you may like, some you may not. But there's one that I want you guys to check out. It's pinned to the top, and
Mm.
it is a video. It is a video of these. Oh, sorry, I'm backwards. I'm backwards of these scales, these brass scales that are up here on this thing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And yeah, it's very cool. I put a music box next to them, and those scales were just moving back and forth to the tune of the music. And I want you guys to know that was a child. That was a child ghost, a little boy. So, but
Yeah,
yeah, it's been fun. I've had some really cool experiences.
right. When
But
you showed me,
yeah,
go
I
ahead.
sent that video to you.
Yeah. I have never ever, like I've seen some crazy stuff, but I have never seen that particular kind of thing before. Like,
Hmm.
so
What I
that's
learned, if you want to get document if you want to get something captured, you want to use things that are electrically conductive, like metal, or
mm-hmm.
if you want those little cat balls that light up,
Yep.
they those work really well. Not so much for moving, but for lighting them up.
Mhm.
They do those really well. Also, you want to make sure your environment is cool and moist, high humidity and cool. There's a reason why um, paranormal activity is greatest in the at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning, because that's when you have the highest humidity and the lowest temperature. So
Mm, that is a very good observation too. So I, you know what? I got to tell you, I'm probably going to. I know I mentioned to you about the round table.
mhm.
Uh, when we get that
Yes, dear.
going, I definitely want you back for that. I want to get you back again, um, coming up to have some more conversation because
Yes.
and go into a little bit more on your some of your experiences, some
Hmm.
of the uh, one of the things that we really didn't go into tonight that that would be interesting because I know for myself when I first start out on anything, I don't care what it is, like literally waking up every day is a new experience for me. But um, when I start out with something new, there's always that that take off going before you start going up.
Hmm.
That is always the most interesting and amusing sometimes
Hmm.
uh, to look back on, and some of the fondest memories
Hmm.
because some of the things that we think about at the time are just like the worst, just like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that or whatever. Later on become very fond memories and for a
Hmm.
lot of us. So
Yes.
at some point, I want to bring you back and talk about your like life as a person who helps with Project Crossover, with the crossing over,
Yes.
because I think that is a very important aspect for people to understand is that this is it's an intricate part of your life. It's not a hobby or something you just put in a shoebox and take out every
Right.
once in a while.
Yeah, I don't do this for money. I don't make money. This isn't something I do for a living. This is something that I do just for the experience of it because it's just there's so many cool experiences and also for just for helping, just for helping people. And so, but yeah, I want to next time I do want to touch on uh, like the famous places, famous haunted
Oh
places,
yeah, yeah.
and how um, they the reason why they have such an influx. It's almost like a revolving door of people that come in and leave and come in and leave because when you have a famous place, it attracts. you know you die, you don't cross over, you're wandering the earth. Where are you going to go? Oh, hey, let's go to the Stanley Hotel. My family and I vacation there every summer. So they're going to be attracted to places that are
Right,
familiar and comforting you know
right. And potentially a place where they can be maybe seen.
uh-huh. That too.
Yeah.
Yes.
So again, just to reiterate this, guys, they're not really any different than they
Mhm.
were,
Yep.
before, and they're definitely not any more different than we are. You know, I mean, our knee-jerk reaction is, if I want people to see me, I need to go where people are going to find me, right?
Right.
And
Right.
so, yeah, yeah, exactly what you're saying.
Mhm.
Uh, So I really appreciate you coming on tonight. I mean, it's like,
Thank you.
girl, you nail it when it comes to that. Like I said, those answers are absolutely, there's so much that you put into that. And I think my guests really enjoy, yeah, they
Awesome.
really enjoy the question and answer part here.
Well, thank
So
you.
I'm going to drop you back for a moment. When I cut
Okay.
out of the stream, I want to touch base with you again before I let you go. So if you'll hang out for just a
Okay.
moment,
Sure.
I
Absolutely.
will be right back with you then. Okay. All right. Well, guys, that was Tanya Ellis. See, I'm telling you guys, I told you she's amazing, absolutely amazing. I'm like, honestly, like, I'm going to go back and watch this to study her technique when it comes to like communication because I'm impressed. I mean, I'm impressed. I really am. and I know you guys were too. And so, again, if you a good way to be able to get in touch with Tanya or any of my guests, like I said, is to go into the Magical Journey Facebook group, get to know people. Uh, these guys are not going to snub you. They love to talk about what they love to talk about, and so anytime you get the opportunity, get to meet them on the through that channel too as well. And meanwhile, you guys, thank you for joining me. Remember to like, love, share this channel out, comment on any of the posts that you see coming up. Uh, I have another amazing guest coming up next week. Um, Paul Anthony, Paranormal Paul. I don't know if you guys know him yet. If you don't, shame on you. But he will be in the house next week. And I have my first recorded interview coming up. So, and I'm going to tell you guys, like, you want to talk about having a big first. This interview that I'm talking about, I've got a couple actually, because I've got one tomorrow night that's pretty spectacular too. I'm not going to drop names yet though on that one. I want that one to be a surprise because this is a friend of mine who has a really great story and a really great thing, but I'm not going to give that one away. This one this one I'm going to give away though, the one big hitter I'm going to give away just because first of all I'm very appreciative of the fact that somebody that has the amount of like he's on the go constantly. So nailing down an hour to do a recorded interview with this man, phenomenal that he was so open to it. And there's Brian Jeffrey from the, are you ready for this? Black Mass Paranormal. Now, if you know that channel, you know the channel. Anyway, that will be coming up on the 27th is when I'll be doing the interview, 27th and 28th, and it will drop the next Tuesday. So be on the watch out for that. All right, you guys have a safe and wonderful weekend, and always, you know what I'm about to say, right? May your journey always be magical.